There's something powerful about the journey of leadership, the daily steps, the long-term vision, and everything we learn along the way. Welcome to Leadership Labs, where we explore these journeys with the incredible leaders of Aurora Public Schools. And each episode, we hear from those who are helping guide our district toward Destination APS, sharing their stories, their challenges, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Welcome to Season 4 of Leadership Labs, Breaking Away. This season, I'm exploring how every leader in our system is accelerating toward our most ambitious goals yet, doubling the percentage of students reading on grade level, increasing graduation rates, and accelerating English language acquisition for our multilingual learners. Every person in the system, from the classroom to the central office, plays a role in getting us there. Today, I'm joined by Tim Burcham, our Chief Information and Technology Officer. In his 7th month into his role at APS, Tim comes to us from the private sector, bringing over 25 years of experience in technology, product development, and innovation across finance and healthcare. And as it turns out, he's also a runner, which I'm sure makes him feel right at home on Leadership Labs. Let's explore what brought him to public education and how technology can help us break away toward our goals. Tim, welcome to Leadership Labs.
Thanks, Jesus.
And also welcome to APS. Now it's a few months removed, but we're so excited to get to know you a little bit more.
Awesome.
So if you wouldn't mind by just starting off by telling us a little bit about who you are as a person and as a leader.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. Congratulations on Season 4 as well. I'm Tim. We did the career background piece. I spent a long time inside of technology for financial services, helped to create a company and grow it up in Boulder, doing a lot of things at very large scale in terms of how technology can work and how data can work. Later went on and did work in public health. Spent a lot of time learning how the SARS-CoV-2 virus works and down at the level of having to learn genetics with the team at a design studio, combined design and genetics. That's a fun one. And then later went to work in healthcare, working with patient data, and the through line on all of those is heavy data, complicated data, messy data, and making sense of it. And the good news is you can do that. The hard news is it's hard. Outside of career-oriented things, I'm an artist. I was formerly trained in film up at CU Boulder, and not just any film. It was experimental film. Take the film, your Super 8, bury it underground with some chemicals and see what happens. That kind of film, and did a lot of work there. So formally trained as a studio artist, and I continue to work on art, whether it's visual, music, installation, or otherwise to this day, and take that pretty seriously. That kind of combines with some design thinking and design work that I do as well. And then past that, my wife and I have 3 kids. They're all college age, past college age, and got bachelor's degrees. They're spread out across the country. And as you mentioned, I'm a runner. I've been running for it's a good 20 years now. And I'm an adult runner. I didn't run when I was young, and particularly like the half marathon distance.
Amazing.
A little bit about me, yeah.
You're also a Arsenal hooligan, aren't you?
Hooligan's not the right term. An Arsenal gooner is the right term.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you might catch Tim and Jen at Three Lions.
You might catch us. Three Lions is no more. It's now the Celtic on Market, and I believe the right response at this moment is Championes, Championes, ole, ole, ole.
Let's go. Well, Tim, most of our listeners, including myself, haven't been a Chief Information and Technology Officer. Could you describe for us what the best day as CITO of APS looks like?
Yeah, I've had a number of these since I've started. I think there's a bit of just the pure administrative side, like especially during like contract renewal season. Our fiscal year starts July 1. So There's a chance to review every contract going through the district, understand what those are about. It's particularly helpful for me in onboarding,
Right.
especially when you start to learn about little pockets and nooks and crannies of software services we might have that we want to revisit. So that's, the pure kind of contractual administrative side, the whirlwind, if you will,
Yeah. Yeah.
from some of our conversations yesterday. But from there, I love to get in front of a whiteboard with my team and with colleagues. I'm a very, very visual thinker, and I like to get in front of that, whether it's doing roadmap development or data architecture diagramming to understand kind of the data system that's inside of a school district. I also love to get out into the field. I really love to spend time with schools. I'm on a mission to meet every principal in the system, and so spending time out in the field, I learn a lot. Especially comes from my product background. I learn a lot from looking over someone's shoulder, like really doing primary research and looking over someone's shoulder as they go to solve a
Mm.
problem. If that's a password, that's one way to think about it for
Hmm.
support, but also process improvements or the software doesn't work, why, and really getting in there to look over, just see like what is it that's not working.
Yeah.
Often with technology, it's not what you think at first glance or what comes in via a ticket. It ends up being something else. And I like to just get down there in the weeds, roll my sleeves up, and understand what it is that's happening.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Your background is fascinating, as we talked about a little bit already, but you've got a BFA in film, 25-year career spanning financial tech, healthcare, data, product innovation, etc. What drew you initially to technology as a career path?
So in third grade in a little tiny K-12 school district, if you can imagine that, it was one building that was the school
Yeah.
district. In third grade, I was sent to the library to learn how the computer worked. The only computer in the district at the time was a little Apple, like 2E or something like that. And I was given a manual and said, figure it out. And I very quickly became Tim the computer guy, for better or worse. It's because I knew how to turn it on was the main reason I became Tim the computer guy then. But in third grade, I was learning basic programming with a program called Logo, programming language called Logo. You could move a little turtle around with coordinates, and kind of started there. I went from there and didn't have a lot of computing exposure until high school again, and that was in Southern Colorado. My family had a computer, but no internet.
Yeah.
That internet was a 50-50 thing in terms of whether you
Yep.
got it or not. And so I got exposure in high school, had a really lovely he taught drafting, but he was one of those teachers who just kind of does everything out
Yeah.
of sheer will. He had built a computer lab. Anyone who was interested, he would teach you. So we got into a habit of he would send me home with little assignments in DOS with
Amazing.
floppy disks on
Yeah.
how to do certain things, and I started to get going there. Somewhere mixed in there was also the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
The Oregon Trail was, a big thing at that time, and
Yeah.
I'm part of the Oregon Trail generation, split between those two generations. I'm not afraid of technology,
Yeah.
also very critical of it
Yeah.
at the right time. So got a lot of exposure through gaming, that sort of thing, and then really was self-taught the rest of the way on my career. Like I said, I ended up in film, not in a technology field formally, but I was self-teaching. I could have had a minor if it
Mm.
existed. I self-taught on web development, that sort of thing. I've learned
Very
everything kind of
cool.
as I go out of sheer curiosity.
Shout out to the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, Oregon Trail. Got dysentery a lot during the Oregon
That's
Trail.
right.
The cyclospora of its time.
Yeah, yeah. We talked a little bit about this recently, and remind me, did you ever make it all the way to Oregon?
Yes,
Yeah.
at least once or twice, but it really did take a long
Yeah,
time to make it
totally.
all the way
Yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, tell us then what made you want to make the leap from the private sector, where you spent the majority of your career, to the public service sector, where you are now, and specifically to a school district.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. But I had it a lot as I was leaving the private sector
Yeah.
from colleagues. In the private sector, your ultimate goals at the end of the day are about making more money, one way or the other.
Right.
And sometimes people are written into that as well.
Mm,
In the best organizations, they are. I was part of a great organization where people were critical to that.
yeah.
In other organizations, especially these days, not necessarily as much. It's about maximizing profits,
Right.
maximizing revenue.
Yeah.
So every goal I worked with, there were also maybe only two or three, but they were all about make more money,
Yeah.
sell more things, and do it more efficiently so we can keep more of the profit.
Yeah.
And usually you're doing that for other people's benefit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get lucky in a company and it's you might get some shares or some
Right.
equity, but often that's for investors, that's
Right.
for only the execs. In the public sector and I dabbled enough public to know I really loved the thrill of the impact. The impact was clear. It was not about maximizing profits.
Right.
It's about maximizing other things that are way more interesting to me right now.
Yeah.
So jumping into public sector, the idea of non-financial motivators and goals was pretty key. And then specifically around a school district, it's about like I love our goals,
Yeah.
helping kids to read better, graduating more kids and setting up career opportunities, and helping our English language learners. Like those are the best sorts of goals, and it's right here, like in my backyard, which is also really awesome. And so I'm a big goal motivated sort of person, a mission vision kind of person. I love our mission and vision. I think we've got a lot of opportunity and a lot of alignment. And that's really what ultimately drew me to a school district.
That's amazing. And I'll share this if I may. I know in 2020, pandemic hit, and your much better half was running a
Yes.
school from your living room.
Yes.
And so you became sort of a COVID AP by proxy during 2020.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, my wife is Jen Jackson, who some listeners may know, and she's run schools throughout DPS. She was at DSST for a hot minute, and as at KIPP right now, as a managing director running schools over there. Like you said, in 2020, she was running an alternative high school that was in turnaround. That's already a hard job.
Yeah.
And the pandemic hit, and I left my job 2 weeks before the pandemic hit, the job of 21 years, completely did two unrelated events.
Yeah.
And I'm off buying quarantine food at Safeway
Yeah.
because that's what we all did or thought we needed to do, while my wife ran a high school out of the living room on Zoom. That was the experience through the rest of that school
Yeah.
year with three of our kids, and then we picked up an extra kid
Yeah.
whose mom was a nurse. We had 4 kids doing Zoom high school as well, and they all mostly fared pretty well throughout that experience in their own ways.
Yes.
But yes, I was off screen during leadership calls for the school, suggesting, maybe don't overinvest in hand sanitizer.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a respiratory illness, that sort of thing, because I was off going down
Right.
my own rabbit holes
That's
about
right.
what was going
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
That's amazing. Was there a moment in your life or in your
Yeah.
particular experience that reframed what truly matters to you, both as a leader and as a person, and maybe that shaped your sense of purpose?
Yeah, that's a good question because I can at this stage in my career I can draw it down to a moment or a series of moments. So one of the things I also am is a cancer survivor. Relatively recent in 2022, I was diagnosed and beat cancer, and well on the track to recovery and
Yes.
an eventual cure. I had a gnarly cancer, but it was highly curable, is the good news. There was a moment early in that process, which was terrifying for me and for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
But there was a moment early in that process with Jen, my wife, where she had an issue at the school that she had to address. She had to work hard on it. And she was doing that from my hospital room, which was intense because I'm trying to focus on getting better. And so the doctor is, and she's trying to handle this issue. And I could hear about half of what was going on and suggested like somewhere in there, I'm like, hey, I think you need to do X, Y, and Z and get these things taken care of in like 36 hours. You got to go quick. She's like, wait, what? I said, yeah, no, I'm kind of half paying attention, but like you have to
Hmm.
move and move fast. And she said, okay, okay. I said, but you have to do it outside of this hospital room right now. This is intense. So she left the room and she came back and she had done a few of those things. She's like, thank you. That was great. It's like a big situation. So like having an extra set of ice was helpful. I said, yeah, I don't know how I did that. I've never dealt with the situation you have. This is confusing because I've been out of leadership for a few years at that point too. I said, this is confusing, but I don't know how I know that. It's instinct. And I had that moment, and maybe the next day while I'm sitting in a hospital bed, I said to myself, I said, I think I might have like a moral or ethical duty to take these skills that I've built over decades and go use them and use them for good. A lot of organizations, especially companies, did not have good leadership throughout the pandemic. It was
Right.
really pretty terrible, actually.
Yeah.
And so I would look at those situations and say, I know there's a way to lead and lead with a positive mindset and in a kind way, but that is also firm, and you can get to really good places and have a lot of fun while you do that too. And so in that moment, it crystallized for me that when I was done, once I was out, I had to figure out what that was going to be. It took me a
Yeah.
minute to find APS, but I feel like this is a place where I can go flex those muscles, if you will.
Amazing. You already alluded to the love you have for our three big goals,
Yeah.
increasing literacy rates, improving graduation, accelerating English language development for multilingual students. How do you think about technology's role in helping us to get there?
I'll give you two quick ways that we're thinking about a lot, and that is when you get to something like our literacy goals, making sure the technology is there, it's stable. We talk a lot with kind of infrastructure around the Placid Lake, right? That when infrastructure, that's network devices, kind of all of the base layers that you need that when that is working well, no one notices it. It's invisible. It's a placid lake with no
Yeah.
disturbances on the surface. It's hard to get there. It's hard to keep it there,
Mm.
but that's the goal, shared goal we have. When you do that, it should create a good place, a platform, if you will. If you take the metaphor, a dock in the
Yeah.
middle of Placid Lake, a platform where you can start to do interesting things, whether it's with software or with the devices to help with the literacy side of things. I think another key on the literacy side is actionable data. As near real time as you can get it, so that educators can use
Yeah.
real time interventions and be able to press in those different ways. And that's an area that we're focused on a lot, is making sure there's a stable data platform to be able
Yeah.
to do that. I think the other direction when you get towards English language learners, there are some interesting kind of untapped possibilities in some ways around translation at
Mm.
key moments, whether that's written or verbal or otherwise, that can help, especially in a district like ours, which is 120 languages. I feel like the numbers, like between 100 and 140, depending on the
That's
day,
right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that. It speaks to the richness of the community.
Yeah.
Translation is pretty critical for anything in those environments, especially with education, especially with English language acquisition. And so one of the ways, let's say with AI, that we're thinking is deploying AI into places where it's impossible for a human to do something, or just really tedious and difficult for a human to do something, are high impact places to put AI in. And I see translation as one of those key places
Yeah.
to make sure that we're able to help those students and help them along their way.
Yeah. I love that. And you made me think of two things. One is even just a few weeks ago, I was talking with the team about, when I first became a teacher, I didn't have a laptop to take home. I just had a heavy desktop,
Mhm.
and then I think about, a couple years ago, we had internet outage here in
Mhm.
APS. And I think a lot of folks, even those of us who had maybe started our career in education with the overhead projectors, and have now transitioned to really relying on technology.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to do this work without the tools.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, totally critical component of the work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna ask you this question because I think a lot of our listeners are curious about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, AI is a major
Yep.
topic right now, not just in education, but across the world.
Yep.
How are you thinking about AI's role in APS, and what excites you or concerns you about it?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I touched just briefly on it a moment ago. One
Yeah.
of the axes I've used, and this has been for a while, I've been working with natural language processing, machine learning, kind of things that fit under the AI umbrella for a long time. And in some ways, they're just algorithms.
Hmm.
They don't think or reason.
Hmm.
There's a way they get chained together as a product that can approximate something like that, right? But understanding them as algorithms, like I can't wait to do a walkthrough for a leadership team of this is how it works, because you can explain how LLMs work relatively quickly.
Hmm.
So that's one piece. I use that lens of impossible for humans or difficult for humans as a way to understand where can you best use it. Past that, I would say some of the ways we're thinking about it are Um, are there thoughtful use cases where this can be used to really move the needle? And I would say in my case, that's not necessarily drafting an email, right?
That's right.
That's a spot where I'm one of those folks who doesn't use it for email. I turn spell check off for the thrill of it, right?
Mhm.
So there's some of those places where yes, it might be able to help with some efficiency, but there can be a cost to that.
Yeah.
So where are places you can deploy it? Looking a lot at classroom use cases, making sure AI in those cases are aligned with the instructional framework we might be using and the curriculum approach, so that you're not going too far off
Right.
track from that, which can be an issue. Thinking about enterprise use cases, so where, let's say, with Oracle for human resources or finance, where can AI actually help some things or
Mm.
automate some things that maybe have been difficult to do in the past? And then I think on the concern side, it is there are a lot of things we're looking at in terms of open models versus closed models. It's not necessarily
Yeah.
an industry term, but
Yeah. Yeah.
in a school environment, you cannot have student data going to anyone that
Right.
isn't under contract or with a data privacy agreement. If you're using an off-the-shelf chatbot, odds that you might be leaking student data or adult PII into that system is real. And most folks aren't thinking about that.
Yeah.
Most folks using it aren't thinking about it at that level. So we're doing a lot of work around where let's get to closed models, folks, not open models that are training on the data, securing things with data privacy agreements. And then making sure we're paying attention to bias and hallucinations and those sorts of things, but just really making sure it's used in an effective and impactful way. And maybe less so as a toy or a hobby. It feels like as a society we're past toy or hobby stage,
Yeah.
and then so we're thinking a lot about capital G governance and what does that mean?
Yeah. Tim, as you sort of reflect on leadership lessons, I'm curious, especially with your unique transition
Uh,
from the private sector, what's one leadership lesson from the private sector that you've been leaning on heavily here in the public service side of things?
Um, I think there are a few. I'll also go with uh, the lessons I'm learning as I'm coming in. So I'm
Yeah.
not just relying on lessons. One of the lessons is anywhere in the private sector with a hint of regulation, apps are off by default. You don't get to just go install something on your machine because of the risk around it, right?
Yeah.
There's some safety around that. It's also a way to prevent hacks and
Yeah.
viral attacks, that sort
Right.
of thing. Um, I thought coming into a school district would be of such a similar environment with, FERPA and play and other regulations. So it was one of the lessons I've learned is no, that's not at least how we're configured. We're in a different kind of autonomy-based environment and heavy autonomy-based environment, and that can be a good thing, but can also lead to
Right.
some security vectors that aren't very fun to handle. So one of the surprises lessons I've learned is uh, well, we're approve all, not deny all,
Yeah.
and trying to thread that needle and work in that situation is a
Yeah.
little bit different.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably the biggest one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What books or resources have influenced your thinking about leadership or innovation?
Oh, that's a good question. I one that I go back to a lot, and it's a little old at this point, so I haven't seen an updated version for these times, is The Innovator's Dilemma
Oh,
by Clayton Christensen.
yeah.
It's very much so about the decisions that you make to operate at large scale anywhere are also the conditions that tend to force you to status
Yeah.
quo. So if you're in a large scale organization and trying to change the status quo, how do you do it when all forces tend to pull you back to status quo? This happens in private businesses, happens in the public sector. The antidote there being that is literally form a skunk works, form a little experimental team outside of those
Yeah.
bounds. That I think that can work. I think that can lead to problems. That is one. You know this, we talked about it early on. I'm a Harvard Business Review stan. Just about anything that Harvard Business Review
Yeah.
puts out, whether it's a collection of essays or a book or otherwise, I lean into those a lot. I get those from my teams a lot.
Yeah.
I would say those are some of the biggest ones that are top of mind. Manager's Handbook, Leader's Handbook,
Yeah.
First 90 Days,
That's right.
all good reads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Music wise, what's playing in your headphones on those runs lately or your drive in? Your most
Yeah.
played or recently
I'm
played?
gonna throw a few out for you. A Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah.
I got I was introduced to the low end theory when I was young and know everything and it's inside and out on that album, which is a lot of fun. Any James Blake or Mount Kimby, I really lean into them. James Blake kind of doesn't miss on anything he does at this point, as far as I'm concerned. So those can be good listens. But one of the other things that I do is when I travel, we just recently traveled to France. A quick example is when we travel, I will Shazam anything I hear. And I collect music when I travel in that way. And I have built up an annual playlist for decades now that is a collection of things I find when I travel, things I learned from, music I hear from a friend. And so some of my long run playlists are collections of those songs, things that I recently found that remind me of a place,
Very cool.
and draw me right back to it.
Very cool. As we round the corner here on our conversation, we'll jump into our lightning round. Two quick questions. The first is, what does Destination APS mean to you?
Yeah, Destination APS, we want to be the destination district. I don't think it's just in the state. I think it's nationally. You got to start with the state. Let's go. I love how Destination APS is even phrased because it has multiple meanings.
Yeah.
So we are the destination. We are headed towards a destination. And I think that destination is full of possibility and opportunity for students in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question for you is, what's one message you'd want every APS employee to know about technology's role in our acceleration to hit those goals and become the destination district, not just here in Colorado, but in the country?
I'll go with the first one, but this is like I'm pitching in my book or something, and it is don't share your logins and passwords. That's the message I need everyone to hear. But in all seriousness, I think it is. We're happy to help. We're happy to be strategic partners. I came in and I inherited a really lovely team that takes customer service really seriously. We're in some pretty significant rollouts of some technology right now. We're happy to get in there and help. We're deploying, the entire division's deploying out into school sites to make sure that first day of school, even pre-first day of school, goes really smoothly. And I think that's the biggest message is we want to get in and help. We might not be able to solve every problem, but hearing what's happening on the ground helps us spot patterns and helps us to put things in to address the patterns and help things systemically.
Amazing.
Yeah.
For our listeners, Tim did not walk into this studio and hear me sharing my password aloud with anyone, just so everybody knows. Tim, thank you for joining us to kick off season 4 of Leadership Labs, Breaking Away. Your journey from film school to financial tech to healthcare data to public ed is a reminder that leadership takes many paths and that sometimes the most meaningful turns are the ones that we don't plan for. I appreciate you also sharing a little bit of your personal story and some vulnerability there and transparency, and your commitment to using technology to accelerate our most important and our most ambitious goals yet for our students, our families, and our community is exactly the kind of breaking away we're going to be talking about this season. So for our listeners, join us next time as we continue exploring the paths of those who are helping guide us toward Destination APS. Until then, keep running your race with purpose.